Alright guys, how's it going? This is Kevin Asani and I am the Progressive Blacksmith and this is the third episode of Ironing It Out. And today my guest is Austin. How's it going, man?
It's going well. How's everything going on your end, man?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a long time since I've seen you.
Yeah, it has. It's been like what now, a year or so?
Yeah, I think so. I haven't I've lost track honestly, I'll admit. Uh,
It's been a while.
yeah, so thank you for coming on. We have a lot to discuss.
Yeah, we do.
What have you been? What do you want to talk about? What have you been seeing?
Well, one of the biggest things that's been really on my mind recently is back in my home state of Florida. It's been driving me nuts.
What's up?
The Rick Scott's deregulation of the industrial infrastructure down there right now, primarily Lake Okeechobee,
Hmm.
is dumping just trillions of gallons of tainted water, including
Wow.
very high pesticide-ridden water. Fecal matter is through the roof, and it's
Wow.
created a blue-green algae outbreak, which is creating the largest dead zone in the known world.
Wow.
Manatees, sea turtles, hundreds of thousands of fish. It's absolutely atrocious, and it's getting no coverage.
Wow.
It's really just disgusting. The one thing I saw today, people are hoping that the hurricane coming through blows it all away, and it's gotten to that point where at this point in time we can't do anything about it. It's just absolutely insurmountable, and it's all coming from the sugar barons, from excessive waste, everything surrounding Lake Okeechobee, and it's destroying just hundreds of endangered species. Everything. It's just disgusting.
Wow. It's almost like what's going on in Flint. I mean, Flint is it's a whole different
Yep.
animal, but it's that same kind of conservative right wing mentality of just due to the resources what you want because it's not people, I guess. But they obviously people are feeling the effects too. But the right wingers and the rich, they don't give a shit about that kind of stuff.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
And the thing with blue green algae too is airborne spores are dangerous to people. People are also dying alongside the
Right.
animals. But again, no one's saying anything because someone tweeted something or Colin Kaepernick just got a Nike deal. You know,
Yeah.
the whole thing is just driving me insane.
I know.
But state I care about and the marine ecosystem that I care deeply about right now is struggling. And I mean, the Gulf of Mexico is viewed as one of the estuaries that really powers most of the Atlantic Ocean and very much of the Pacific.
Right.
So many species travel there to spawn in the salt marshes and the intercoastal waterway and the grass beds. But right now, that's just as threatening to marine ecosystem and oxygen production as what's happening in Fukushima.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about the Fukushima stuff. A lot of the chemical waste uh, that was dumped because of the tsunami, I believe they had there in 2012, was it 11? I forgot when
Yeah,
it was.
it was back in the
And
early 20 teens. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so a lot of that waste has traveled, through the Pacific all the way to kind of the California coast, and I'm sure up north a little bit more too.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
it's bad. It's a fucked up situation.
Yep.
And
I'm
I
in
know.
Seattle right now. We're watching the outcome with the number of salmon coming through. Our orcas are starting to die. The dams haven't really helped. They're blocking off ecosystem as well for the spawning beds. But
Wow.
for the first time in decades, the Chinook salmon, which many species up here thrive entirely on, including our native orcas, which kind of separates them from other orcas worldwide, they
Right.
only eat the king salmon, the Chinook salmon.
Right. Right.
So because they're coming in and they're all under 15 pounds, at best maybe up to about 18 for the most part, when usually they should be in the 30s. Um, Marine mammals are starving, and that's man-made disaster right there. And Fukushima is still leaking; they can't clean it
Wow.
up. They actually went through a point in time where they tried to hire homeless to go in for thousands of dollars a day, with full disclosure that if they were exposed, odds are they would probably die of radiation sickness.
Wow.
There's nothing that can be done.
That's crazy. It's just obviously all the politicians are bought off. Nobody wants to say nothing. People,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, people just get outraged about the stuff that they can get outraged about. the things
No,
that are just
whatever's
easy.
easiest.
Yeah, exactly. What's easiest? So if Donald Trump says something outrageous, oh, that's okay. You can rant about that on CNN for how many days, a week, and then people get their satisfaction. As far as Trump getting shitted on, basically, and Trump getting, I mean, look what happened with this McCain, John McCain eulogy. Everybody's like, fuck you, Trump. You didn't like John McCain. This is a thing at you. And then everybody,
Mm.
Obama, Bush, John McCain's daughter, Meghan McCain, were, kind of, poking and prodding him a little bit, saying, oh, well, you aren't a true leader, but this bloodthirsty warmonger over here, he's a perfectly normal guy.
Well, as long as you kill tons of indigenous people or
Right.
foreign people, then you're just as American as everyone else. It seems like
Exactly.
it's ridiculous. I can't wait to see what happened when Henry Kissinger passes away.
Yeah.
Not that I would explicitly say I want him to die, but I'd like him to not be alive anymore.
Yeah.
That would be fine by me because
Yeah.
honestly enough, we've got enough war criminals and
I know.
fucking mass murderers alive at this point.
That's a really interesting topic about the idea like of how everybody reacts to these people that kill other people. What happens when we react to how they die? So if they
Oh yeah.
die, we're supposed to be. I mean, I understand the fact that people don't want us to be like dancing on somebody's grave, pissing on somebody's grave, but at the same time, these people, what did they do when they killed all the people they did? What happened when they waged all the wars they wanted to wage? And did they
Oh,
ever?
when the murders were over, they went and they had a drink at a bar and celebrated going
Exactly.
home. That's what happened.
Exactly. That's how it is, man. And then they expect us to be super nice and super pleasant about it. Oh, well, you died, and that means
So if
you're.
you're not American.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you're not a war hero. If you're not idolizing a war hero because he did one great thing that honestly I wouldn't. I don't know. I don't know if I would do what John McCain did when he was staying in that Vietnamese camp. They captured him, and he says, "I'm not going to leave because, I don't want my own soldiers to be given away, and I'm going to stand up for them." But at the same time, that doesn't mean I can't criticize you for your shitty policies. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that you're an asshole. I'm just saying that you're an asshole because A, B, and C, and X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Well, there's one thing to be said for standing up for your platoon and protecting your brothers in arms, but there's a whole other thing to be said for advocating for hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of deaths overseas
Yeah,
after you experienced all that. Like,
exactly.
it's the same thing of looking at like what would have happened, inside Nazi Germany. Let's go back to like 33 or no 37 would be a good
Right,
time,
right.
because 33 is a little early for our intervention. But whenever one of the great generals there was killed, do you really think for a moment they're like, oh, he was just a bad guy? No, they're like, oh no, we just lost a comrade.
Right.
And they probably played up the same nationalistic kind of bullshit that we're looking at right now with other war criminals
Yeah.
and other murderers. It's absolutely asinine to think that we're any different, but the only thing that makes us
Exactly.
different is we're just as brainwashed as those who came before us. So we're not
Exactly.
really different. We just
Yeah.
think we're different.
Right. And a lot of people will say like,
American
"Oh,
exceptionalism.
yeah," and a lot of people will say like, "Oh, well, those were the Nazis." But yeah, I mean that's true too. But the Nazis were obviously horrible. But John McCain, that doesn't make him any better. He was bad
So
too.
those Nazis were pretty damn patriotic. I tell you
Yeah.
what, they
Right.
cared about their country enough to kill a fucking ton of people.
Exactly.
Not
Exactly. Yeah.
good stuff.
It doesn't matter whether you're a Nazi, whether you're a white supremacist, you're a KKK guy. If you've done all these terrible things, you need to be called out for it because they'll definitely do it with the KKK guys, the neo Nazis, all those people, and that's fine. You want to kill
Oh,
those
yeah.
people. You want to punch them in the head, and just like Richard Spencer happened to Richard Spencer and stuff. That's fine. You want to do that
Hmm.
stuff, but at the same time, you have to be willing to call out the people that are also, yeah, they're dead, but we're not going to just go there and just like dance on the grave. We're going to actually call them out for the specific policies because that's what's important. And
Exactly. You can't just say you hated somebody and fuck him for
exactly,
whatever he was. You have to look and say these are the reasons why that person was a bad person. I
exactly,
mean, it's the same thing with the whole Hillary Clinton Trump thing. It was nothing but insults flung. It was a whole, well, if not this, then you're going to get this. But there was no real conversation on anything. There was no substance. It was all
no,
just sensational garbage.
It was.
And people very quickly become disillusioned to sensationalism when they're actually, going to work and they're scraping up $300 less than they need to survive every month. You know, it's completely
Yeah.
useless to go ahead and play that game.
Yeah, and this is a point that Kyle Klinsky from Secular Talk talks about all the time. He says, a grandmother in Nebraska doesn't care about what Vladimir Putin is doing. You know,
No.
like, does she care about democracy? Okay, I'll give her. I'll give that. People obviously care about democracy, but at the same time, we don't really care about democracy because we're overthrowing countries too. So we're doing
Yeah.
exactly what they accuse Russia of doing. So do they? I don't know. Do they not see this? Do they not care? I don't understand what it is.
Well, don't forget what happened in the premier in Iran. We
Yeah,
got rid of the premier and we reinstated the Shah.
exactly. Yeah.
And it was all for the greater good, but
Yeah.
the greater good of those who would benefit. And at the
Right.
end of the
Yeah.
day, when you strip away benefit, you take away national titles. What we did there is no different than what's being accused of Russia now, which to this day still has zero substance. Not a single thing's been provided. The most recent thing that the DNC was talking about, an unsolicited hacking attempt, ended up being one of their own guys on the inside screwing up. And they had to retract it, but that wasn't run on the news. Only the fact that they thought that Russia tried to hack them again was run. So very convenient disclosure, and
Right.
it just fueled a fire that has no need being lit.
Yeah.
But
And,
at the same time, tangibility, we look at what's going on. We're constantly being washed over on Russia. But
right.
we have the new $100 trillion tax proposal. We have the fact that federal employees just lost their January raise. We have
Yeah.
deregulation of infrastructure and industry across the country. I mean, everything's screwed, but we're not so interested in that because it's not as interesting as the political melodrama that is our government. I mean, we
Yeah.
watch the Kardashians and we watch Jersey Shore. We're not exactly on
Right.
top of things here.
Right. I know. It's all about just what's going on with the celebrities and when it comes to politics, the political celebrities. So that's why everybody was so
Exactly.
obsessed. That's why everybody was so obsessed with Sarah Palin when she came out. Oh my God, Sarah
Mhm.
Palin, this amazing person. And then when Obama was going and hanging out with Jay-Z, Jay-Z and Obama are fucking cool, and Beyonce's there.
Mhm.
So it's like everybody just wants to talk about the elitist aspect of politics, obviously,
Yeah.
because that's what interests their bottom line. That's the people that they fucking hang out with. Those are the people from CNN and MSNBC. They get along with those people. They don't get along with that grandma from Nebraska. They don't know who the fuck that person is. Now they may watch them, but at the end of the day, and they think that Rachel Maddow or somebody has their best interest in mind, but they don't. That person,
No.
honestly, they're just they're a useful idiot, honestly. And
Mhm.
whether you're on the right, same with Fox News, of course, no different. It's the same exact thing. It's just a different network, but they all they know how their bread is buttered.
Yeah. I mean, you look at all of the old fables about what happens to someone when they amass power.
Yeah,
You got to look at somebody like Maddow and realize how much money she's making a day. I mean, she's
it's
making
crazy.
per hour, like what is it, $34,000 an hour?
Yeah.
Which is more than that's more than I make a year.
I know.
In an
Yeah.
hour.
Yeah, exactly.
What lengths would a person go to keep that, to actually retain that kind of a status? People would give up everything that they believe in just to maintain
Yeah.
that elitism. And it's not unreasonable to think about humans that way because humans naturally we strive for more. The grandma in Nebraska simply wants to strive to take care of her family better.
Exactly.
Those who have got everything else that they need through a lifetime of constantly trying to plateau up, they have the same mentality ingrained in them through years of working that way. So you
Yeah.
take somebody like the O'Reillys,
Right.
the Maddows, any of them. I don't believe for a second half of them believe what they say. I think they all want to keep their status and they want to keep their financial income.
Yeah.
I mean, there
don't
was a time where Maddow was actually a progressive voice, and
I know.
one day that all changed. For what reason? Who knows? But it did, and it changed like flipping a coin.
Yeah, man. I mean, I want to just read off a couple of really disturbing facts here
Go for it.
regarding the what's happening in the United States. Half of America makes 30K or less, $30,000 or less. 76% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 45,000 people die a year from lack of health care, and half of Americans can't even come up with $400 in an emergency. $400.
Hmm.
I mean, that's crazy. You
Yeah.
know, somebody like you or me, we have that luxury, right? You know, like we might be lucky for that. I know my parents are they taken pretty good care of me. I've been able to, work, live a pretty decent comfortable life. But there are people out there, they're living on the street. They got to work four
Hmm.
jobs. They got three jobs. It's a really tough. I don't know how people. I don't know how people in the politics, the elitist circles, they go out there and they know these things too. I guarantee you, they know some aspect of it. I'm sure, but they ignore it and then they go out there and just bring up the latest Trump scandal.
Yep. A deflection and keeps everything away from their own personal image. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm here in Seattle, and we have, I think, the second highest homeless population just
Wow.
behind Los Angeles right
Yeah,
now.
I'm in LA. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can walk through, where my work is. I work right on Fourth Avenue South and Holgate, just about a block away from CenturyLink Stadium, where the Seahawks play.
Right. 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 Right.
And down there are encampments of 40, 50, and 60
Yeah.
people scattered everywhere.
Yeah.
And rather than setting up any kind of an actual program that will help these people to sleep well at night, to bathe, to take care of themselves, to feed them,
Sure.
to try to introduce into society, what happens? They fence off the bridges and the undercroftings where they
Really?
could actually stay and not have to be rained on in Seattle.
Wow.
The people sweep the camps. Our Democrat
Right.
mayor
Right.
says all of these amazing things and then whips back around and does what's best for the real estate developers who want a prettier city. It's just horrible. I mean, you got
Yeah.
Shama Sawan up here actually fighting like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
motherfucker to try to take
Yeah.
care of these people and fighting half of the most liberal city in the world's city council. It's I can't even really put words to it. I mean, our taxes up here, I'll be honest, are pretty outrageous at this
Yeah.
point. They've turned my city that I moved into just south in Burien from 500, $600 for a room in an apartment to about 900 to 1100 a month within about 3 years.
Wow.
But even then, at the end of the day, it's a half and half up here. People view Seattle as very progressive and very
Yeah.
pro person, but Seattle's just as sensational as the news is. There's a lot of really convenient, easy giveaways and
Yeah.
handouts just socially, but when it boils down to the actual finances and politics of it all, this place is split in half.
Yeah. I love Kosharma Sawan. She's awesome. I mean, she's a
Mm,
one bright light in in that kind of political atmosphere, and
oh,
she's
yeah.
obviously it's a very big political atmosphere. She's a little tiny, nail that they're trying to hammer down and just keep out of the mainstream. But she got a lot of attention for commenting on McCain's death and stuff and saying
Yep.
that
Well,
exactly
she
what we were
constantly
saying.
works. She's
Yeah,
one of the few people I've seen up here who just doesn't stop. I mean, even across the country, she's got that same kind of energy that Bernie has, where every day she's
that's
got to
good.
keep moving.
And they still shit on
Um,
her. That's crazy. I don't even get that. Like, how do you
of
have the
course
nerve to
they
shit on?
do.
It's crazy. You got somebody that's working their fucking ass off, and you're still whining about how they say something that offends you. And it's
Anybody
about a
who,
Republican of all people.
of course. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
hell, I mean, you watch the DNC nominations. I mean, Hillary
Right.
Clinton's sitting there with her arm around Henry Kissinger and just
Ugh.
kissing ass and talking about how she and him are such great friends.
Yeah.
It's all establishment. And the
Yeah.
second somebody comes forward who actually cares about workers, unions, the little
Right.
guy, poor people, homeless, well, that person is a threat. They have to go
Yeah.
because they're threatening what we have been maintaining for however long.
Yeah.
And that's the mentality. Anybody like them, like the Bernies, like the Gabbards, the
Right.
Sawants,
Right.
they all are a threat to what has been the status quo.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all it is.
Yeah. And I have to say, I know I would have probably said something different maybe 3 years ago or so, but I'm not caring too much for Elizabeth Warren these days. I think Elizabeth
Mm-hmm.
Warren, is a little bit of a disappointment in my eyes.
I
And
really couldn't agree more.
it's I want to like her. I really do my best to like her and appreciate some of the things she does, but she becomes so milk toast sometimes. And
Yeah.
I mean, she ends up sounding a little bit like Hillary, and it kind of scares
Mm-hmm.
me. And people kind of want to push for. Sometimes people kind of want to push for her. I know some people are definitely calling her out a lot more, which is very good. You should call out everybody. Call out Bernie. Call out Bernie if
Yeah.
he does something wrong too. It's not nobody is
Yeah.
exempt, of course, right?
Yeah. I
So
mean, there's a lot that a lot of people really don't pay much attention to. Speaking on Warren, I remember a very definitive moment back when we were in the 2016 elections. Given her relationship to Sanders in the Senate for decades, it was really surprising to me that she would not endorse him at
yep,
all. And it took Hillary winning the nomination for her to finally say that she was going to endorse Hillary, which to me looked like, trying to get a cabinet position and
yep,
trying to cover her own ass. But for this, spunky fighter, this
right,
progressive, just lion, really just dropping out like that when you could have been fairly helpful and deciding to play it safe is not the sign of a progressive fighter. That's the sign of somebody who's just looking out for their career. And you see Warren do that pretty frequently.
yeah.
She'll say one thing that needs to be said, and then the second she faces the lightest criticism, she'll backtrack it,
They're
to just
telling her
walk
something
it right
behind closed
back.
doors. They're telling her something behind closed doors and
Mm-hmm.
saying like, "Shh, shh, you're not doing the right thing here." Some idiot
Mm-hmm.
political strategist comes up to her, and a lot of us we know these people they're morons. They don't know what the hell they're
Ugh.
doing. These are the same idiots that ran Hillary Clinton's campaign and lost to Trump. So why
Yeah.
should we trust them with anything, right? So they
Well,
go up to these people and they're like, "Yeah, don't say anything too progressive that'll rock the boat. You're not gonna be able to get an appearance on CNN. And CNN's
yeah.
gonna what I'm saying. So
You're gonna piss off Pelosi. You don't want
right,
that. I
exactly,
mean,
yeah.
God forbid if she can remember through all the fucking cocaine. That lady is crazy.
I can't stand her. She's from my area in the Bay Area, when I lived. So
Mm-hmm.
I actually lived in her district. I lived in San Francisco when I was going to
Ugh.
school, and I was like, ugh. Like at that point, I was probably gaining a lot less respect for her. Losing a lot more respect for her at that time, and it
That's
was just like,
slimy.
yeah,
That's
she's.
very slimy.
And look, she goes out there and she fucking brags about being a great, what is it? A
A
great
great
fundraiser.
political strategist and fundraiser.
Fundraiser. I'm like, come on, you're bragging about being a sellout. That's all you're
Yeah.
doing. Like, what
That,
is that? That's where we've
that's
come.
the only reason. That's the only reason I can figure she's even still in the kind of position she's in right now. Like Speaker Pro Tem, Minority House Leader. Dude, she can't even
Yeah,
string a sentence together, but she
yeah,
can raise a lot of money.
yeah, exactly.
I mean,
So I don't know. I people like that make me lose hope for our generation, our kids' generation. Everything that's coming forward. It's people
mm-hmm.
like this, and everybody fawns over them. Oh, everybody loves them, but like we're sitting here and we're like, okay, what the fuck is going on? This person is completely doesn't relate to me at all because she's obviously a rich aristocrat. She's on the mountaintop living her life, as she
Oh
likes it.
yeah.
We're us peasants are down here and we gotta suffer while she's living lavishly, but and nobody blinks an eye because they're like, oh well, she's not a racist. She's not anti-gay marriage. She's not. She's. They pick out all these little things that
I don't
that
know,
makes her.
man. They you take her and you put her in the middle of Brownsville in Pensacola or in the middle of downtown Chicago, just south of the city.
Right.
We might learn a lot about somebody
Yeah.
like Pelosi.
Could
Those
be.
nice gated neighborhoods and all that,
Yeah.
It's easy to not be a racist, but I bet you threw her out there and let her see what the world's really like inside an inner city ghetto like where
I
I grew
agree.
up.
Yeah.
Bro, she would probably flip like a coin. Fast,
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that really drives me nuts. I hear a lot of the racism debate, and I mean, I grew up in the ghetto in Pensacola, Florida. I
Really.
mean, for the time when I was there, it was the highest violent crime rate city in the entire state.
Wow.
And I actually love my home. I love the people I grew up with. I love my town.
Right.
A lot of people are just going through more hardship there, which leads to more crime. The school I
Exactly. Yeah.
went to, I believe when I graduated, had about a 72% African American to other races ratio. And a lot of those guys, I'm really happy. A lot of my students and my friends, they're actually going somewhere, man. We got
Good.
lucky. We had a good school. But you see a lot from the aristocrats in Pensacola just completely condemning, just like on the national scale to Chicago, to
Right.
any
Right.
of the other places, just really breaking these people down for the fact that they're struggling and they're having to live under certain circumstances. And it really pisses me off because you'll see a lot of the liberals come out and say, well, you know, X, Y, and Z, Chicago. We should, just make
Yeah.
sure that, they actually have less access to guns. We have to make sure that, somehow or another their culture is accepted. Bullshit solutions. We need to make sure that they have the opportunity to make money. We need to make sure that they can earn
Yeah.
a living to where the parents can be in the household and the kids can actually find some form of acceptance rather than
Exactly.
being on their own 24/7. We need to find a way to make sure that the infrastructure is actually uplifted, and we need to make
Yeah.
sure that all of the social programs that are currently in existence don't make it harder for black folks and anyone else to
Right.
make it into the program, which happens a lot.
Yeah.
Social standings like SNAP. Rick Scott down in Florida had
Yeah.
said that he wanted to drug test anybody for any kind of social benefits like food stamps or anything like that, Section 8.
Right. Right.
They also recently, on the national level, said that they're going to try to make it so that Section 8 people, anybody who's living in Section 8 homes, could not smoke cigarettes, both inside or
What?
outside of the house.
Wow.
Now, you're talking about stressed out folks, people who maybe smoke a cigarette when they're stressed and are really having a tough time.
What's
Talking
next? Are you
about
gonna give people curfews too?
we're on that track. I mean, literally,
Shit.
you're in the land of the free. We're looking at people in need and saying, nope, unless you sacrifice your freedom, you can't work to get in free again.
Right.
And I mean, that's one of those things. And the left will praise food stamps and SNAP, and then at the same time completely overlook the failures and flaws that have been written into it that make it harder for any
Yeah.
minority to get in. But whenever it's a white family, which I'll say it as myself, it doesn't seem as hard. When my
Yeah.
family was
Yeah.
going through and having to live off food stamps, and we were living out of motels and squatting in decrepit
Right.
houses that weren't even half built because we were flat fucking broke,
Right.
it was really easy for us. But I knew families
Right.
of classmates who it took 3 and 4 months just to get through.
Yeah.
That's 3 and 4 months. If there's an infant in the house that needed formula, that kid
Exactly.
could have been severely endangered. The kids who were going to school with me in elementary school and living off of school lunches and breakfast but not getting dinner.
Yeah.
What the hell? What are these people actually really trying to protect here? Because it sure as shit ain't the people they're talking about.
No, and the people they claim to care about, oh, we care about every American. Democrats are always putting out this very flowery rhetoric. Barack Obama mastered it. He was
He
the
did.
master of that shit. And because, especially after we had Bush, so Bush was such a fumbling idiot, and he made everything look so like folksy and like he's like this like down home cowboy. But then we had after that
Mm-hmm.
we had this really nice talking black dude who everybody looked up to, and I admit I fell for it. I was like, yeah, he seems like a cool guy. He can probably
I
get us
voted for
change.
Obama.
Yeah, I
one
voted for him
time.
twice. I voted for him twice. Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. You were smart. You voted for him once. I voted for him twice. I voted for Jill Stein in 2016, so I'm happy about that.
Me
Glad
too.
I didn't go. Yeah, exactly. I'm
Yep.
glad I did not go for the Hillary whatever fucking. Oh, you got to do it because whatever. But generally, the problem is that they like to make everything sound good, and then in behind closed doors, when we're not looking, because we obviously can't see what they're doing behind closed doors, they screw us over. They pass tax cuts.
Hmm.
Just Trump did the same thing. Now that's not surprising. It's Trump. But if I'm hearing from Obama how he cares about all these people, I expect a little bit more out of you. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I expect a lot more out of Democrats, as bad as they are. But I
Yeah,
expect them to be a little bit more. I don't know. Giving me Obamacare is not that great. I mean, it's
that's
not
Romney
terrible.
care.
Exactly, it's not a terrible policy, but it's not enough. I mean, that's not you're throwing
No.
me breadcrumbs. You're not throwing me
Hmm.
anything that's really substantive.
Well, that's
And if
that's what both political parties do. The only difference is that the Democrats are better at actually hyping up those breadcrumbs.
right,
I mean, Mitt Romney wrote the original legislation that would become Obamacare.
yeah,
So it's a Republican policy that was passed under guise of Obama and progressivism, but it was really just a political concession during his presidency.
yeah,
My grandfather, he was a Korean War veteran. Yeah, whatever on that. Um, he was a very, very diehard conservative. And I grew up in a very odd circumstance, watching nothing but conservatives in Central Alabama and North
mm,
Florida. There was this one thing he told me back when I was young that I haven't let go of: never criticize your enemy. Your enemy's your enemy. They're going to do the things that you expect them to
mm,
do most of the time. But always criticize your companions and allies, because those are the people who are claiming to stand for you. And when they
right.
start screwing up, well, that's the moment where you really need to be vocal,
That's a good point.
because you can't allow those who claim to be there for your best interest to sell you out. Always expect your enemy will. That's why you take your stance against them.
That's a really good point. I didn't think about it like that.
It's something that I haven't been able to let go of, especially
Yeah,
in recent years. I watch the
yeah,
Democrats. I'm much more angry at them than I am at the conservatives. I mean, I'm obviously
yeah,
very angry at the conservatives, but I expect everything they do.
yeah.
But for the
Exactly.
Democrats to sell us out, to bail out Wall Street, to also, be complicit in putting in all of the cabinet picks Trump brought in, even back when
Ugh,
W.
yeah.
Bush got in, they did the same stuff.
Dude, they fucking
Um,
worked for. Voted for the Iraq War for Christ's
yeah,
sake. I mean,
they're complicit in mass
Jesus.
murder on the scale of millions. I mean, that's where I stand. Is I can't really be all that vocal about the conservatives anymore, because we know where they stand. But
Yeah,
what about the Democrats and the progressives that are saying
yeah,
that they're here for you? Those are the people that need to have an ass whipping verbally or whatever.
yeah,
They need to know what we think and how we think. And
yeah.
they're the
That's true.
ones who are supposed to be standing up for those ideals.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I never really thought about what you were saying before. Now that you bring it up, because I shit on Democrats a lot on my page. I didn't originally when I started
Mhm.
my Facebook page. I do it a lot now, and I'm proud of it. I'm cool with that, man. I mean, I don't mind. See, like you're cool with it. A
Yeah.
lot of people that know me that are come to my page and enjoy coming to my page like it, but I get a lot of shit. Like, how dare? What are you doing? Why aren't you going after Trump? Why aren't you going after him? Is it? But yeah, but I already know he's going to do that terrible thing. What do you think? I expect him to go pushing for Medicare for all? Of course not. He's going to
Nope.
go and fucking screw everybody over. He's going to pass, humongous tax cuts. He just signed a $716 billion defense budget that gives even more money to the
Hmm.
military defense contractors. I mean, but
And
that's the thing.
Democrats overwhelmingly helped that go through.
Yeah, and then even when Obama was in there, they did it for Obama too. So what difference does it make? So what did we get? We just got an asshole on Twitter who fucking talks a lot of shit, and then on top of it, he does the shitty policies. So what's the difference? We just
Yeah.
got the asshole on Twitter. That's it. That's all we got.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
hey, I mean, Trump's a moron. We know that. Dick
yeah,
Cheney is a warmonger.
yeah,
W. Bush,
exactly.
he's also
Useful
a
idiot,
moron, but he's a little more
puppet. Yeah,
entertaining. Yeah,
yeah,
great painter, great painter.
yeah,
Him and Jim
yeah.
Carrey need to do something together.
Right.
Um, no, I mean, you look at the it's low-hanging fruit. Why aren't you going
Exactly.
after Trump? Why aren't you going after Pence? Why aren't you going after whatever? Because it's too easy.
It
And
is.
everyone else is already doing it 24 fucking 7. So
Yeah.
why waste my time?
Exactly.
What's really important is listening to, your Claire McCaskills, or listening
Right.
to the Patty Murrays in Seattle
Ugh,
saying that
yeah.
healthcare for all is somehow or another going to bankrupt us, when it's about $3 or so trillion in a 10-year span cheaper than what we're doing right now.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Um, poking holes in the math, because obviously they didn't take math. They're listening to those Democratic strategists again, which, God. We
Yeah.
have to really start being a little bit more proactive than just reactive.
I
Because
know.
right now, Americans are a reactive society, and we're not really paying attention. No one's going to know about the blue-green algae outbreak that's going on in
Yeah.
Florida unless people start really reacting. What's happening, though, is they're watching the news and hearing it's a red tide.
Oh.
It's not a dinoflagellate explosion. This is the creation of certain pesticides used to get rid of algae in Lake Okeechobee, which are also beneficial to a hazardous breed, blue-green algae,
Right.
growing. And with fecal matter in the water acting as fertilizer naturally, and with all of the detriment and all of the silt deposits in that lake,
Right.
it creates a perfect devastation storm. And what you're going to hear? Well, there's a really bad red tide and the state of emergency has been declared. Well, the state of emergency part's correct. Every other part of the story is not. And it's already on paper. It's proven by all the universities in the state.
Right.
No airtime, absolutely no exposure. It's just red tide. I mean, it's just a cover up.
So I mean,
And it has to be a cover up because Rick Scott's running for Senate this year. You
yeah.
watch. He hasn't
Yeah.
announced.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
going
That's.
to in the next month, I bet.
Are you serious? That's
I'll put
crazy.
money on it.
Oh
He's
my
he's
god.
been positioning himself the entire time, especially since Andrew Gillum just won the Democratic nomination down there
Oh, for
as a
governor. Yeah.
Bernie-backed progressive. He actually is a progressive.
Yeah.
He's going to do everything he can to take that position in Senate
Oh
and
boy.
basically push things into a stranglehold.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned how they're framing the problem that's going on in Florida that way, because what they do a lot with these situations is they frame it in the simplest ways possible so that they don't have to get into details. So all these details that you're mentioning that's happening in Florida, no, you're not going to hear that anywhere. You're not going to hear the details. You're just going to
Nope.
hear a little sound bite, just a little. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what we heard from
Mm.
that one person, and then it's like you don't get into because that's the thing. Cable news. I'm not sure how your local news. How local news is in Florida and stuff like that, or
Oh,
anywhere really. I mean, I know.
it's
Here.
Sinclair. It's all the
Yeah.
same.
Okay. Okay. Well, there you go. So then it sucks. Then. So
Yeah.
that's what you're going to get out of that, and obviously nobody wants to call out the politicians that aren't doing anything to solve that problem. They're going to just be like, oh well, we care about, but hey, let me go and go to a fundraiser real quick. Let me go and get my money,
Mm-hmm.
get paid essentially, line my pockets a little bit more because I have to do what's good for me and not good for anybody
Mm-hmm.
else. But I have to get reelected so I can do good things for you, even though I'm not really doing anything.
That
That's all
right
it
there
is.
that's the key. Re-election. The
Yeah.
entire point to many of these people is their next re-election bid. Jimmy Dore's talked about it. Placone's talked about it. Kyle Kalinski's talked about it.
Yep.
Whenever you're the House of Representatives sitting member, every 2 years. So the second you get elected, the whole thing is to just jump right back on fundraising for the next one. Senators, kind of the same way, except
Yeah.
it's every 6 years. But at the same time, as a senator, there's a little bit more cushiness to it. Plus, you have more clout, so you can raise more for those bigger
Yeah.
elections. Even with governor and everything else, the reason Florida is not being reported on properly is because re-election campaigns are happening right now.
Right. Right.
And because those re-election campaigns are happening, well, given that Florida typically is a little bit of a swing state, much more conservative when you get down to ideology. Even the old Democrats down in the South, where they're all retiring to, are all old blue-haired Democrats who vote pretty much like 1980s Republicans.
Oh, okay, okay.
I mean, they're Reaganites. That's what they grew up with.
Right.
That was their prime era.
Hmm.
Um, like Hillary.
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
when it boils down, if their favored candidate was to get hit, slandered, or to be hit with some real facts, well, that would hurt their ideology. And given the massive split, even between Republicans, means now there's a plurality. 51 or 52% of Republicans support Medicare for all.
Mm,
Recently released in a USA Today poll. That puts the overwhelming majority in support of that. But
yeah,
if you have an avid sitting member who has been speaking out against it, and now those facts come out, well, that can't be mentioned. If you have
yeah.
somebody like Rick Scott, who has deregulated, privatized beaches, everything else in Florida, and he's going up for a reelection campaign, and there's catastrophe happening,
Ugh.
we can't talk about that. Because what would happen if he lost? Someone we don't know would get in. They might change things. Oh,
So
man.
I think that's a good that's a little bit of a good bridge to the next thing I wanted to bring up, term limits. What do you think about the idea of term limits for everybody?
I'm kind of half.
Senators,
I'm kind of half and half on it, honestly.
really?
Which is an odd position for progressive to take. I do believe term limits would serve a very good purpose. I mean,
Why
there
are
are.
progressives against it? Do you know why?
Well, most aren't. I think
Okay,
I'm probably one of the only progressives I know who kind of has this outlook that I do.
right.
Term limits would actually prevent career politicians. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
But looking back in time and looking at what the few stalwarts of the progressive side have done, given that we've been choked out of politics,
yeah,
we would never have seen a Bernie Sanders had that been instated. It took an entire career for him to actually finally scratch surface and get a voice. Same with a lot of them. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard would never
right.
actually build the political clout and actually gain the expertise and the knowledge and wisdom to take her platform and care for her people.
True.
And looking at the way that the presidency is handled now, the only other side that I have a real issue with would be political experience. If you had a term
Yeah,
limit across the board, then you'd never have somebody who may have actually experienced and gotten to know
right.
the political field well enough to actually be a good executive. Um,
I
on
can
the
see
other
that.
end, I really do believe that there are too many people that have turned politics into just a career gambit, just a bank
Yeah,
account, a check, free health care, or whatever they want, and have been disillusioned from the needs of their constituents.
yeah,
I think a better way of going about it would be periodical constituent, almost like reviews, not like a
right.
vote, but let's say that there were a mandatory 8 to 10 issues for your district
Right.
that were going on right now. And every couple months, there was a review of your actions on it. And it wouldn't necessarily amount to much, but it would highlight how these people are responding, and
Yeah.
it would highlight their point of view. That way, it couldn't just be fluffed out during election season. It's
Right.
in the
Right.
middle of the election season.
Right. Right. Right.
Something to actually bring colors to the piece of paper. But
I think that's a good idea.
I think that there has to be some kind of terminal review, something that really forces things, other than the
Yeah.
silent things like public disclosure commissions that you have to go out
Right.
and
Right.
search for yourself.
Right.
More exposure on these people.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
I think what you're talking about, like they do that with regular jobs. You have a yearly or every 6 month
yeah.
review at your job. Oh, how you doing in your job? So why they can't do that for politicians, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And in the case of in the case of the going for re-election, honestly, that doesn't do much because a
They,
lot of them,
they're just going to say what they want to say. And
yeah,
once they get reelected, then fine, fuck it, back to what we've been doing this whole
exactly,
time.
because it's every
But
2 years too. So it's
yeah,
like it's not even very often.
but I like a
So
political peer review. I really do, because that's
yeah,
an opportunity for the people to sit down and say, well, you've done this okay, but you really need to fix this. This
yeah,
has to change. If you don't do that, you're on thin ice, guy.
yeah,
That's the kind of thing we need. We need it to be televised. We know
right,
average town halls, more interaction, less office time. Put down the phone from the fundraising and start
right.
interacting with your people. That's what makes Tulsi Gabbard and Bernie Sanders amazing. Is they
I
spend
know
more time on the streets and in the neighborhoods talking to the people that they
they
represent.
do. Yeah,
And look at
remember the days of how they would talk about they said, oh, we're good. Like the politicians said, we're going door to door. We're going door to door and talking to everybody. We're going
Mm-hmm.
to our communities and stuff like that. Who talks about that anymore? Whoever even talks
Mm-hmm.
like that, you know?
Have you seen the picture of Bernie Sanders standing there under an umbrella holding a sign saying that he's up for re-election and he wants to
No.
talk to you in the pouring rain?
Wow.
He's done it. I mean, the
Yeah.
old guy literally stands on the corner of the street at an intersection asking to talk to people in the pouring rain.
This is recent.
This has happened in the past couple of years. He was still
Wow.
gray-haired and old.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't a young Sanders, but
No.
I
No.
wouldn't doubt for a minute he probably did the same thing throughout his career.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you got to give him
I
credit
mean,
for doing it at all, but it's. I mean, they are just. It's amazing the way the establishment treats him. I can't even understand how they get away with all these hit pieces on Politico, which honestly is like the cesspool of establishment, just
one word,
propaganda.
one word, socialism.
Yeah, exactly.
Old people hear socialism, they think the Red
Oh yeah.
Scare, they think the
Yeah.
Ruskies. They don't look at it like we do. We hear socialism, we think about most other
Yeah.
developed nations. Healthcare for all, properly funded
Yeah.
education, good infrastructure,
Exactly.
family leave, all of that. But as long as those older folks are still actively engaged in voting more so than the younger folks are, or just the folks that are struggling, we got to find a
Yeah.
way to increase voter activity and involvement.
And
Um,
and and another word you can bring up is Venezuela. You bring up Venezuela, everybody's flipping out. Cuba, Venezuela. You bring something up like that, everybody loses their
mhm.
fucking
Never
mind.
mind the sanctions America put on it. Never mind
Yeah.
that we've been actually destabilizing them for what now, about 15 years?
Wow.
The same thing we did in Honduras.
Right.
The CIA, I mean, you can go ahead and say you believe me or you don't, or really don't
Right.
care. The information's out there, and just as speculative as the news is, maybe use your own brain for it. But, all of the indigenous speakers, all of the rights folks, all of the people who really were standing in the progressive view in Honduras started getting killed.
Wow.
And it's been happening consecutively. Over 9 people who were outspoken voices of their country, the socialist standpoint of
Wow.
protecting the environment, of deregulating corruption,
Wow.
gone.
That's
But
crazy.
I mean, for one thing, read Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Amazing book. It literally
Who's it
talks
by?
of. Oh God, give me a second. It's an amazing book, and it's important. I really do think that this is one of the more valuable pieces that you could ever read.
Yeah, yeah, let's look
Um,
that up because I want people to know that.
I am going to make sure. I even think that Lee Camp
Yeah.
had the writer on his
Oh,
show.
okay. Yeah, he's good. I love Lee Camp.
John Perkins.
John
Um,
Perkins. Okay.
yes, John Perkins, JohnPerkins. It was
Great.
published in 2004, and it's for the most part an autobiography. He used to be one of those guys who would travel to foreign nations and say, "Yes, we'll give you this kind of financial support, but
Right.
in doing so, we expect to see this, and this back." He worked
Right.
for corporate parties and basically explains how we've been sapping the economy from other nations by taking those profits instead of redistributing in neighborhoods and through
Exactly.
the workers, bringing it back to the U.S., which is
Exactly.
also how our sanctions work. If you read that, you read his firsthand accounts of a long career and then a realization of what we've been doing, probably change how you think about things.
What's the title again? If you could say it.
Confessions of an Economic Hitman.
Confessions of an Economic Hitman. That's a
And
very good title.
I'd say if you really want to just get a good blurb about it, watch Redacted Tonight's episodes where
Okay.
he has John Perkins on there. It's fantastic. He will highlight some key points, but not enough to even barely
Yeah.
scratch the rest of the book itself.
Yeah, man. I mean, we need to have these kind of voices, and that's great that Lee Camp is highlighting that. Lee Camp actually had my last guest that I had on for my second show for my second
Oh,
episode. He just had him on, so he's
oh,
actually
that's
the head.
awesome.
He's the head of the Bernie or Bust movement. His name is Victor Tiffany, I think,
Okay.
and so he kind of started that whole Bernie or Bust movement, and we were having a good conversation about that and all the things that he wrote about in a book that he did with somebody else too. So,
Yeah.
but what I was gonna say is that it's good that all these different progressive voices are able to put these people out there, so people who know who the fuck they are, because otherwise,
Yeah.
who's gonna hear about them? Nobody. You
Nope.
mentioned the name John Perkins. You mentioned the title of his book. Who's going to know anything about that?
And who the hell's
That's
John
why,
Perkins?
yeah, that's why we have to put out those. We gotta have people that are able to put out information that people can hear about these things that obviously CNN or MSNBC and Fox News aren't gonna, they're not gonna say anything about that.
Exclusionary practice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
No
it
joke.
hurts their bottom line, obviously, right? So
Yeah.
Comcast owns MSNBC. They don't want anything to come out. CNN is owned by Time Warner. They don't want any of that stuff, hurting them.
Who's advertising on the commercials? You want to
right?
know why they're
Exactly.
not doing what you want them to? Look at who's running commercials in between
I know.
segments.
I
Well,
know. I knew somebody that told me that one time, and I was like, "Damn, that is so true." When you mentioned the commercials, I'm like, I'm like, "Oh yeah."
yeah,
It never occurred to me, But
it's unfortunate.
yeah. Before we wrap up here, I want to ask you one thing that's related to your your home state of Washington over there.
Yeah.
Sarah Smith is running against Adam Smith in
Yes,
the
she
primary.
is.
She is awesome. We had her on Establishment Exiles, and she's an awesome progressive. And
Yeah.
man, they hate her. They can't stand her in the mainstream media. They're like, "What are you doing? Like you're, trying to get over this, this Adam Smith guy, and he's a strong Democrat. He's a real Democrat."
Yeah, no, I really, really like Sarah Smith.
Yeah.
They actually just, because I'm in Burien, there was just an event recently through the Washington State Progressives that actually held an event at my local bar, a little place I always like to hang out. Shama Sawant, Sarah Smith,
Nice.
Tanya Singh from California, huge activist, came up.
Right, yeah, I know her. Yeah.
Yeah, a number of fantastic individuals all gathered here and actually had like a really nice meet and greet. We all got to kind of see each other, and unfortunately, I was too broke to be there. Kind of broke my heart.
Oh.
But I got to watch the videos of them speaking. I mean, Sarah is a lion. I cannot wait to see how things go. Partly from a political scientific perspective, because it's a Democrat running against a progressive, which technically is going to be Democrat versus Democrat. The whole "you have to vote for the lesser of two evils" thing is now gone. So now we get to see a little bit more of the inner workings. But also, I'd tell you to pay attention to a number of other people up here. I'm not sure many of them actually won their campaigns, but I expect they will be back. There's Tamborine Borelli, who is fantastic. She's run up against Denny Heck most recently, which he is just an absolute establishment tool. There's Tyler Vega, who is one of the most efficient organizers I've ever met in my life.
Nice.
Fantastic folks. Shanda Masta, who has been involved before. There is Jennifer Ferguson, goes by the name Gigi Ferguson, who was running against Maria Cantwell, Senator of Washington, on an anti-corruption campaign. There are some amazing people up here. And Sarah Smith is right on the same page as the rest of them. I mean, the heart is for the people. She cares about seeing healthcare. She cares about seeing a better system for the broken. She cares about the homeless.
Perfect.
She cares about the environment and cutting down on our fossil fuels and taking care of what needs to be done. My words to any Washingtonian watching who has the opportunity to vote for Sarah Smith, she's a progressive Democrat. If you thought for a second about voting for Adam Smith, he's been your guy for a while now.
Yep.
Consider upgrading. Try voting for Sarah. See how it affects your communities. If it's not better, you can always vote her out. But what has really been fixed since Adam Smith
You
has
tell me.
been your
You live
representative.
there. You tell me. What has anything really been fixed under Adam Smith?
Things have been going downhill where I'm at.
Wow.
And
Since when? Since when?
I've only been here for 5 years, but I've watched everything just fall apart. I
Wow.
mean, I'm right on the line. Right on the line. I'm actually in Pramila Jayapal's district,
Okay. Okay.
but only
Okay.
by a couple miles.
Yeah.
Most of my
Pramila J. Paul's
friends.
cool. Yeah. Pramila J. Paul's cool too. She's obviously has a lot of good things to say. I think she's been a little bit too anti-Trump for my take, in the sense that, attacking him when on
Mm-hmm.
like as we talked about before,
I'd
not
like to
really.
see
Yeah.
Pramila and Shama Sawant spend a little
Yeah.
bit more time together. I'd
Let's
like to
hope
see
so.
Pramila get a little bit more of that gumption.
Right. Yeah.
But
I mean, even when I even know about how she's been a little bit like that, then then it's bad. I'm sure you guys
yeah,
can see it a hell of a lot easier than I can.
she's a good
Um,
progressive for the most part,
yeah.
but she lacks a lot of the backbone she needs, and it makes her a little bit too Warren-esque for me at
I
times.
was gonna say. I was gonna say. Did we talk about Elizabeth Warren? It kind of reminds me. It might be a little bit like Elizabeth Warren. Might be a
Mm-hmm.
little opportunistic in that way, and
Yes.
that's not good. And because Sarah Smith is a our revolution candidate.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think our revolution is good? Do you think they seem to definitely be gaining steam for sure? Obviously, Andrew Gillum won, and
Mm-hmm.
Sarah Smith's part of them, and
I
obviously
like
Alexandra Ocasio Cortez. What do you
I
think
like a
about
lot of the
her?
ways they operate. I like a
Yeah,
lot of the ways that our revolution operates because it's down to the figureheads of local our revolution chapters to pass everything up. The timeline and vetting process seems a little long and drawn out, but all in all, I have a hard time seeing how people like Gillum, Smith, or Cortez could have gotten through without the exposure that they got through having that kind of funding. And
right, right.
rather than having to beg corporations for a political loan in
Yeah,
funding, I prefer that.
yeah. I mean, those groups are definitely helping. Obviously, definitely
Yeah.
helping more than hurting. Obviously, they're hurting the corporate interests, of course, because those people can't stand
No, fuck
groups like
them.
this exist. Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And Hillary Clinton. I heard Hillary Clinton is going to campaign for people. Barack Obama is going to be campaigning for people. I mean, I don't want to hear anything about that. Joe Biden is going to probably run. Oh my God. I mean, I
Well,
don't.
I just want to see the names of the people that Hillary and Obama run for, so we know who not to vote for.
I know. Yeah, they're going to be
That's
the
a given.
typical. Yeah, I don't know if they're
Yeah,
running like any, or if they're
they'll
backing
be
any like new
neoliberals.
people. Yeah, I don't know if they're backing any like a lot of new people, but they're definitely backing a lot of like, oh well, I've been friends with this person for a long time. Back them, Oh, you
Yeah.
should go out and vote for them, because they're really something. And then they put out some stupid
Yep.
flowery rhetoric that we've always heard,
Of
and
course.
a lot of it just boils down to political, you know, just political like friendship and just kind of camaraderie, and then you just got to go and
Mhm.
you know vote for that real Democrat. None of those socialists, none of those communists. They're starting to sound like Fox News these days. It's crazy,
Oh
you
yeah.
know. That's what
Well,
that's the whole thing with this, and I this is a point I've made to other people too. It's a lot of the stuff that's coming out about Russia and stuff. Anybody that's not like lining up with that typical democratic view, you're called a Russian. Oh, you're a Russian bot, or you're a
you're
Russian
a
troll
plant.
or
You're a
something.
stooge.
Yeah, look who's talking. These people talking about Russian stooges. All right, guys. Sorry about that. Looks like we lost the feed with Austin. But thank you very much for watching our show. This has been Ironing It Out with Progressive Blacksmith Kevin Asani. And once again, I want to thank Austin for joining us. And hopefully, you guys enjoyed the show. And we will see you next time. Take care.